Have you ever said something and immediately thought, why did I say that? Or made a decision and later wondered, what was I thinking? Or reacted to someone in a way that surprised even you? We all have those moments. Moments when we don't recognize ourselves. When our actions don't match who we think we are. These moments reveal something important. A gap. A blind spot. A lack of self-awareness. Today we're talking about self-awareness. What it is. Why it matters. And why most people have far less of it than they think. Let me start with a definition. Self-awareness is the ability to see yourself clearly. Objectively. As you actually are. Not as you wish you were. Not as you present yourself to others. Not as you imagine yourself to be. But as you truly are. Your thoughts. Your feelings. Your patterns. Your strengths. Your weaknesses. Your impact on others. Self-awareness means knowing yourself. Really knowing yourself. And that's harder than it sounds. Here's why. We spend our entire lives inside our own heads. We know our intentions. Our justifications. Our internal narratives. But we don't see ourselves the way others see us. We don't notice our patterns. We don't recognize our blind spots. We think we're self-aware. But research shows that only 10 to 15% of people truly are. That means 85 to 90% of us are walking around with a distorted view of ourselves. And we don't even know it. Psychologist Tasha Eurich studied self-awareness for years. She found something surprising. Most people who think they're self-aware actually aren't. They confuse introspection with self-awareness. They think because they reflect on their thoughts and feelings, they know themselves. But thinking about yourself doesn't mean you see yourself clearly. In fact, too much introspection can make you less self-aware. Because you get lost in your own head. In your own justifications. Your own stories. True self-awareness requires something different. It requires objectivity. The ability to step back and see yourself as an outsider would see you. And that's incredibly difficult. Because we're naturally biased toward ourselves. Psychologists call this self-serving bias. We take credit for our successes. But blame our failures on external factors. We see our intentions as pure. But judge others by their actions. We notice when others are rude. But excuse our own rudeness. This bias protects our ego. But it destroys our self-awareness. So what does real self-awareness look like? There are two types. Internal and external. Internal self-awareness is knowing your own values. Your passions. Your strengths. Your weaknesses. Your thoughts. Your emotions. It's understanding what drives you. What triggers you. What makes you feel alive. What drains you. External self-awareness is understanding how others see you. How you come across. How your behavior affects people. How you're perceived. Most people focus only on internal self-awareness. They know what they value. What they want. How they feel. But they have no idea how they're perceived by others. And that gap causes problems. You think you're being helpful. Others think you're controlling. You think you're direct. Others think you're harsh. You think you're confident. Others think you're arrogant. You think you're passionate. Others think you're intense. The gap between how you see yourself and how others see you. That gap is where misunderstanding lives. Where conflict grows. Where relationships break down. True self-awareness bridges that gap. It requires both. Knowing yourself from the inside. And seeing yourself from the outside. Let me tell you about David. He's 36. Works in finance. Smart guy. Hardworking. Ambitious. David thought he was very self-aware. He spent a lot of time thinking about his goals. His values. His career path. He knew what he wanted. Where he was going. What mattered to him. He had it all figured out. But David had a problem. He couldn't keep a team. People quit. Constantly. Within months of starting. David was confused. He was a good boss. He set high standards. He pushed his team to excel. He wanted them to succeed. Why did they keep leaving? His company sent him to leadership training. Part of the program was a feedback exercise. Anonymous feedback from his team. David was shocked. His team described him as demanding. Harsh. Impossible to please. Never satisfied. They said he made them feel incompetent. That nothing they did was ever good enough. That working for him was exhausting. David couldn't believe it. That's not who he was. He wasn't harsh. He was just holding them to high standards. He wasn't impossible to please. He just wanted excellence. But here's the thing. Intent doesn't matter if impact is different. David intended to inspire. But he impacted people by crushing them. He had internal self-awareness. He knew his values. His goals. His intentions. But he had zero external self-awareness. He had no idea how he came across. How his behavior affected people. How his words landed. This is common. Very common. We think we know ourselves because we know our intentions. But we don't see our impact. Self-awareness requires both. Intention and impact. What you mean and how it's received. So how do you develop self-awareness? That's what this series is about. But let me give you a starting point. First, stop assuming you're self-aware. Most people who think they are, aren't. Approach yourself with curiosity. Not certainty. Be willing to discover things about yourself that surprise you. Second, pay attention to patterns. Notice when the same situations keep happening. The same conflicts. The same outcomes. If 3 people tell you the same thing about yourself, it's probably true. Even if you don't see it. Even if it doesn't match your self-image. Third, ask for feedback. Real feedback. Not just from people who like you. From people who see you clearly. And when you get feedback, don't defend. Don't explain. Don't justify. Just listen. Absorb. Consider. Your first reaction will be defensive. That's normal. But push past it. Ask yourself, what if they're right? What would that mean? Fourth, Notice the gap between your values and your actions. Most people say they value one thing, but their actions show something else. You say family is most important, but you work 70 hours a week. You say health matters, but you eat fast food and never exercise. You say you value honesty, but you tell small lies constantly. You say you're not judgmental, but you judge people all day long. The gap between what you say and what you do. That gap reveals truth. Self-awareness means closing that gap. Fifth, pay attention to your emotional reactions. Especially strong ones. Anger. Defensiveness. Shame. Fear. Strong emotions are signals. They point to something deeper. A trigger. An insecurity. A wound. A pattern. When you react strongly, ask yourself why. What's really happening here? What am I protecting? What am I afraid of? Most people ignore these signals. Or justify them. I'm angry because they were wrong. I'm defensive because they attacked me. But self-aware people dig deeper. They use their emotions as information, not as justification. Now let me be clear. Self-awareness is not the same as self-criticism. It's not about beating yourself up. It's about seeing yourself clearly. The good and the bad. The strengths and the weaknesses. The beautiful and the broken. Self-awareness without self-compassion is just harsh judgment. And that doesn't help anyone. But self-awareness with compassion, that changes everything. Because you can only change what you can see. If you don't see your patterns, you'll repeat them. If you don't see your blind spots, you'll keep hitting the same walls. But when you see clearly, you can choose differently. You can grow. You can improve. You can become the person you want to be. David started practicing self-awareness. He asked for regular feedback. He paid attention to how people reacted to him. He noticed patterns. When he was stressed, he became sharp. Critical. Impatient. He didn't mean to. But he did. He started catching himself. Pausing. Choosing different words. Different tone. Different approach. It was hard. Really hard. Because his natural instinct was to push. To demand. To expect more. But he practiced. Day by day. Conversation by conversation. He became more aware. More intentional. More conscious of his impact. A year later, his team was stable. People weren't quitting anymore. And something else changed. David felt better. He thought self-awareness would be painful. Seeing his flaws. Facing his weaknesses. But it wasn't. It was freeing. Because he wasn't pretending anymore. He wasn't defending a false image of himself. He could just be honest. About who he was. What he was working on. Where he needed help. And that honesty made him a better leader. A better colleague. A better person. Here's what I want you to understand. Self-awareness is not a destination. It's a practice. You don't achieve self-awareness and then you're done. You practice it. Every day. In every situation. You notice. You reflect. You adjust. You notice again. It's ongoing. Constant. Never finished. And that's okay. Because the journey itself changes you. Most people avoid self-awareness. Because they're afraid of what they'll find. Afraid they won't like what they see. But here's the truth. The things you're avoiding, other people already see them. You're the only one who doesn't. Self-awareness doesn't create your flaws. It just reveals them. And once they're revealed, you can work with them. You can accept them. Change them. Manage them. Grow beyond them. But you can't do any of that if you don't see them. So the question is not whether you want to be self-aware. The question is whether you're brave enough to look. To see yourself clearly. As you actually are. Not as you wish you were. Because that's where growth begins. That's where change becomes possible. That's where you stop repeating the same patterns and start creating new ones. In the next video, we'll talk about blind spots. The things you don't see about yourself. And why you don't see them. But for now, just start noticing. Pay attention. Ask yourself questions. Who am I really? Not who do I think I am. Who am I actually? What patterns do I repeat? What impact do I have? How do others experience me? What would they say about me if I wasn't in the room? These questions are uncomfortable. But they're necessary. Because self-awareness starts with honest questions. Not questions you already know the answers to. Questions that challenge you. That make you think. That reveal truth. So ask them. Sit with them. Don't rush to answer. Just be curious. Because the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. And you can't have a real relationship with someone you don't know. Even if that someone is you. Get to know yourself. Truly. Honestly. Courageously. That's what self-awareness is. And that's where everything else begins. I hope this video brought you something meaningful. If you find it helpful, please like and share it with someone who may need it. Subscribe if you would like to hear more stories like this. Wishing you a calm and peaceful day.